If I started rereading my work as I went along, I don't think I'd finish. I'd be like, this is a pile of shite. I'm not on Twitter anymore. My partner...
I got rid of Twitter as well.
It's just
so awful.
It was just...
That's
when you know you're a writer. There's feminism again, popping out. That was a really good twist, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I won't say no spoilers there now, but there's a twist that I was not expecting that.
How he is, I've got Louise O'Neill in my house.
Look at us,
I
little
know,
publishing buddies.
And we've both read each other's books as well. We were kind of just joking about how you'll have to read Louise's first.
Yeah.
Because hers is like, you know, nail biting on a roller coaster at the edge of your seat kind of stuff. And then mine is kind of like a blanket and a cup of tea kind of book.
I think it's more that yours is like reaffirming, you know, the reader's faith in humanity. Mine will sort of shake
tearing it down.
Yeah, and then yours will like reaffirm it, you know?
So maybe buy them together if you want to be really supportive. But yeah, no, Louise O'Neill, so you have heard me talk about her before and her books. Yeah. I have read all of your books except for, was it called, name your books.
Okay, so there's Only Ever Yours, Asking for It, Almost Love.
Almost Love, I've not read that.
Okay, well there you go. That'll be your The Surface Breaks and After the Silence, and now Idol. Idol is about Samantha Miller, who is this very glamorous, very wealthy, very beautiful American wellness guru who sort of, you know, has built this empire for herself, has millions of followers on social media, travels all around the world giving motivational speeches, and her latest book, which is called Chaste, has just come out, and in order to promote it, she has written an essay. And this is kind of the start of it. So she's written an essay about her, like this sexual awakening, this kind of experience that she had with her best friend when she was a teenager, Lisa. And the essay goes viral, and then Lisa gets back in contact to say that that is not quite how she remembers it, and that her memory of the night is much darker. And I suppose then it's like, you know, Sam has to go back home to her hometown to sort of confront Lisa. And I suppose it's really like, you know, whose story do we believe, and like whose truth, I suppose, do we believe is more valid, and who gets to tell the story?
Yeah, it really goes into like memory and how people, almost like if you tell yourself a lie enough times, you believe it yourself. And about, you know, everyone says like my truth, your truth, but they can be very different, and it's like there is always like an ultimate, like what happened, you know, if you were a fly on the wall watching it, what happened,
or if it was being recorded. Like I'm not sure if you know, because I have a sister who's a year and 9 months older than I am, so I'd love to know if you've had a similar experience where, so we're very close in age, and like often when we talk about our childhood, it's as if we were raised in two
different
like with two different parents, and we'll have these things where I'll say, oh, remember that day when my ball got stuck in the tree, and she's like, no, that was my ball, and I was no, that was my ball, you know. So it's like that thing where memory is so fallible.
I feel like the fact that you explore the whole influencer space along with this is just so perfect, because the power dynamics as well. It's like just because someone has a platform, that doesn't necessarily mean that they should get to have the
final say almost, because like Lisa is still living at home in their hometown and is married to her high school sweetheart and has 2 kids. It's like, why does Sam get to sort of tell the story?
I'm just getting taken back to like certain moments in your book. I don't want to give spoilers either as well. That's the hardest thing when you're talking about new books. Both of our books are out now, by the way, when we're uploading this.
Buy both.
But yeah, this was a proof copy that Louise gave me, and so this is her lovely cover. Louise's book also explores topics like disordered eating and envy as well, and performative wokeness, which is just like is a big topic of discussion within the influencer space. I think because I'm in that space, this was just like, I was messaging you while I was reading it, and I was like, there's just certain, you know, inside head thoughts that she's having, and they're like my biggest fear is to ever think that way, or to ever think that people would perceive me that way. And there was just so much in this that I was just like, oh god.
You know what, that's such a compliment, because I suppose, you know, I'm not an influencer, so like it's really when someone who is reads it and is like, oh, this feels like, I don't know, like it's authentic, or it's kind of making me like, oh, thank god.
What inspired you to write this, and where did the initial what was the initial spark for the story?
There's a couple of things, and the first one actually is it's years old. So in 2012, I think it was, Lena Dunham released a collection of essays called Not That Kind of Girl. I'm not sure if you read it.
I remember that. Yeah, that's so going back.
It's a long time ago. And like one of the essays she talked about an experience that she'd had when she was 7 and her sibling was 1, where she opened her sibling's vagina, was looking inside, and the reaction to it was like, I mean, it just caused such fierce debate, and 50% of people said this is child abuse, and then 50% of people said no, this is just kids exploring each other's bodies. And I think I was really struck by that you could have one event and like one story, and that it could be sort of interpreted in such
differently. Yes.
I was really, I think I was just, and then I suppose after I wrote Asking For It, which obviously dealt with rape culture, and I would have a lot of women coming to me at events telling me their stories of sexual violence, and often they would say, but I don't think he remembers it that way, or I really don't believe that he sees what happened.
He thinks he did wrong.
Yes, yeah. And I suppose again I was like, wow, okay, so 2 people can go into a room and they can leave, and one person that's the most traumatic,
completely differently.
Yeah, and then one person can say that was the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me, and the other person can say, oh, that was a consensual sexual experience. It's really
it's
frightening.
It's terrifying.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Samantha's character is she's obviously like really flawed and messy, but you can go from like pitying her to loving her to hating her. You just painted her so well, and and it's the kind of thing as well where sometimes it can be hard to read about those kinds of characters, because you're like, you really annoy me, and all these things, but you also are then concerned for them, and you want to know what happens to them. That's so difficult to do, even just to get the kind of messy human aspect across is so difficult.
Well, I think you did that really well in Glass Houses. Do you not think, with Jenna, with both?
It's hard to see it objectively.
I know, of course, but I was going to say with both Jenna and Rosie, like I felt like it was, in very different ways, because obviously Rosie, who's the older sister, sort of seems like she has her shit really together, and then I think when you kind of have more of an insight into her life and what's going on, you can see that where the cracks are kind of beginning to form. And then Jen is obviously really vulnerable.
Probably told us about this so many times. So it's about 2 sisters. They're estranged. They're not really in each other's lives anymore, and they end up under the same roof, and the 2 of them are keeping so much from one another. Yeah, our books are very different.
I can see similarities.
There are similarities though. I was about to say that, like, even the way you had a kind of a love triangle thing, but it's not a triangle. You know what I mean? It's like one person really wanting someone else, but they're with someone else. Kind of, you explored very much that kind of, how people see something very differently, and I feel like mine went very much that way only because of the pandemic. And I think within my family I was seeing a lot of people debating, like, this is what's going on, and then them trying to coexist with each other, and I was like, oh my god. And that really did like end up coming into my book, and there's like there's something happening, and it's like, you're either on this side of the fence or you're this side of the fence. And obviously in my book it's like, if it's leaning toward the magic end of things, and it's not intentionally allegorical, like it's not like, the pandemic, it's real or it's not real, but it was just like, it was so difficult for me dealing with those conversations during those couple of years. I was like, I can't listen to this anymore. And I think that was really coming through then in this. I just find it fascinating how something can be happening and you can see it one of 2 ways.
Yeah.
And I did want people to be able to read this and either see it the way Rosie sees it, or see it the way Jenna sees it.
Yes. And that is actually a real, like as you said, a correlation, because obviously with Idol, like Lisa and Sam have such completely different interpretations, and I suppose actually with Jenna and Rosie, like they also have very different interpretations of sort of their circumstances and their relationship. And I suppose it is interesting reading about that, because it feels more, I suppose there's just more nuance to that, isn't there? And also it feels more honest, but it's just more realistic as well. Also, I thought with Pete, I suppose they kind of there's in both books there's sort of like an unnamed, at the start anyway, troll that is really like really harming both of those characters, you know.
When I was reading yours, I was like, she's done it so much better than me.
No,
I literally went on the video on my channel. I was like, if you're gonna buy one of our books, please buy Idle. I was literally like, because you're so like, you're such a master of what you do.
Oh
you
my
know what
God,
I mean?
stop.
You are. You're such a good writer. It's
I
disgusting.
said thing where you're like, oh God, I'm really embarrassed there, but I'm like,
You're
thank
so
you.
good. I know it's really awkward to sit there and hear that from anybody though. It's like, even when you were being nice to me earlier on about my writing and all, because we were talking about it, and like I was saying to Louise that I have such a fear of never being taken seriously because I'm also like an internet creator, and you know,
but I felt really bad about that, because I think when you sent me the book, and I mean I really like you as a person, and I was a little bit, I actually,
I'm so glad you told me this.
No, and I felt really bad afterwards, because I said it really sort of showed up, I think, my own like prejudice, because I was like, oh God, a YouTuber, like what is this going to, which is like really wrong. It was quite small-minded of me, and I could I picked up the book and I could tell within a few pages, you can always tell within a few pages, I was like, oh my God, she's a really good writer, like this is really well written, and I was so relieved. I read it in like one sitting, and just really really enjoyed it, found it really moving, found it very, like, I think that you made really unexpected choices in places that I was like, oh, I think that was a really like smart choice, like from the perspective of a writer, and just, I don't know, it felt very like life affirming, and honest, and I really, and again, please don't judge me for judging you. Like, I do feel guilty about it, okay? I don't want you thinking that I don't feel guilty about it.
Please don't. I've had those thoughts as well. Like, you know, there's other creators who've stepped into like fiction writing, and I've had those same thoughts, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I know myself that people can be more than one thing, you know? But yeah, it's just like, you know, I've always wanted to write, but that, you know, isn't necessarily going to come across. Like, and I have some people follow me only for a specific type of content. Like, they're not necessarily following along with me for me kind of thing. But the way I always think about it is, like, this is a legitimate job, and it's seen as that now. But years ago it wasn't, and I suppose that stays with a lot of us. I still view myself through that, you know, almost like that's not a real job type thing.
It really is, and I suppose I say this, and like, having written a book, you know, that is kind of skewering a lot of I suppose that kind of wellness space, or a lot of the influencer thing, but like, I couldn't do your job. And I mean, I'm not saying that to like be condescending or, you know, anything like that, but like, you know, let's say if I go away for a weekend and I'm like, oh, I just can't wait now to turn off my phone and just like completely switch off. And then I think, God, if I was an influencer, and let's say if I was getting this weekend, or even if I wasn't, but let's say if it was being gifted, and that you would have to be constantly creating content, I would find that so exhausting, like so mentally and emotionally draining. And I think that people who can do it, I think that that's tough.
I've become quite shit though. I think that's because sometimes I just won't post Instagram stories for a few days. Like, it's terrible. Like, I used to treat it a bit more professionally, I suppose, but I think I kind of,
as well,
I forgive myself now, because I'm like, for my own sanity and to be a good parent, I have to turn it off, so, you know. But the call is still always there. I'm like, I should be posting, and what if I don't post? Will I still get jobs, and will people still give a shit? And, you know, and obviously as well, like this kind of stuff, you know, I work so hard on this, and then I want to be able to share that as well, but I don't want to talk about it too much, because I'm like, some people don't care, and it's such a,
that is exhausting.
Yeah,
like, so seriously, it is like,
and I do all the roles as well. Like, I don't have any staff or editors or anything. Like, I do all of the things, so it's a lot of hats you have to wear. But you write books, but you also write articles, and like, you know, you what is it you do with the university?
Oh, like, yes. Well, so I mean, writing books is my main job, I know. And then I don't know, honestly, it's like I don't know why I keep saying yes to things, but so I write a column as well for the Sunday Times, and I think actually I like that in a way, because I'm not on Twitter anymore. My partner,
I got rid of Twitter as well.
It's just
so awful.
It was just, I was like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, every time I went on, it was like, okay, another person who really hates me.
I know. I left it during the lockdown, and actually a bit like one of the storylines in this with it, because you kind of go through like the cancelling theme. Yours exploration of it is more like more nuanced, and kind of your look, like you kind of cover a lot of sides and a lot of thoughts about it, whereas I felt like mine was very much coming from the like feeling of going through it yourself. And
I was just going to say, because I can understand that. Yeah.
I remember one day, like, a load of people calling me a fascist, and I was like, that's it, I'm done. Like, I'm gone. I can't deal with this anymore. Because I'd said something and they were like, oh, that is associated with these fascist people, so therefore you're like, just the maths to go from 1 to 10 that quick. I'm just like, this is not a proper, you can't have real discourse here. You can't have a conversation in X amount of characters. Like, this is ridiculous. And I was going on it every day and coming away from it feeling so much worse, because I'd waste time reading these threads of people just saying things they'd never say to each other in real life. You wouldn't say that to a human
I think
being's
it's
face.
the casual cruelty of it, you know. It's like as if it's almost like a sport, and there's this sort of, I mean, and the thing is that often when we talk about, I find like the term cancel culture like just is so overused now, and like it's actually very hard, like, you know, you see it when they talk about people, like an awful lot, like these people are, the more powerful you are, like, and the richer you are, it's almost impossible to cancel you, you know. And I suppose there's a difference between like that and cancel culture, and also I suppose that we can have, I suppose it's trying to have the cognitive dissonance, right, to have the awareness that yes, there has to be consequences for bad behaviour, and of course it's important to call people out.
Call out culture I define differently.
Exactly. But I suppose as well, if you're someone in the public eye and you've been at the centre of a pylon, or if you've been at the centre of like trolling or hatred, like it's very corrosive, you know? And I mean, I can't even imagine like what it's like when, I suppose, when you have such a huge audience, because I could even see it, like I only had, by the time I left Twitter, I don't know, 30 something thousand, and like honestly you could see it with each extra 5,000 people.
It gets worse.
It did, and you were like, I was like, you know, the start I was like, oh, this is so fun, and then I was like, oh no, stop, leave me alone.
That's why I don't make stuff anymore aiming for it to be viral or big. I actually focus on like the audience I have and making things more niche, because it's just so much more pleasant, and I have had experiences where I've been called out, and it's been a very, you know, it's been such a good learning experiences for me. And, you know, people can call you out on shit that you've said in a very, you know, in a way that's like serious and firm, but like empathy, like human, respectful, you know, like
respectful of your humanity. Do you know what I mean? More so than like deference, you know, that kind of way, like actually being respectful of your humanity.
Think about people in your life and you want to help them grow and improve. You don't start shouting awful things at them. What I love about your book is like, it's not just some kind of caricaturish, like it's not just like black and white. It's you do try and portray so many angles of the whole situation. I think that was really deliberate in terms of, you know, often I think when, you know, like when I'm doing interviews with this book, you know, people will say, what do you want the reader to take away, you know, and I've actually just said, I think with this book it's so complex and it's so nuanced that like I don't really have any answers, and I think it's up to the reader, you know, to read Idle and to, I suppose, look at, you know, everything that I've sort of been trying to explore in that book and really make up their own minds, you know. Because I suppose these issues are so complex, you know. So that's kind of the, I feel like for me it just, like, the main thing when I finished it, I was like, people are so like messy, you know, like for someone to be on this pedestal and then for something like this to happen, it's just like, I felt so in her head, the way you wrote it. I really felt like I was in her head and like felt her feelings, and her even just, it's like her, I could see her little eyes dashing around just to try and because she's really manipulative as well and stuff, but she's like, you know, I did really sometimes want to just give her a big hug. I was like, you know, as anyone, like someone could just do the worst thing ever, but I still wouldn't want to see them.
I know, but you're very human, I think, and I think there's something about like, I don't know, I suppose I wonder, have we lost that a bit? Like, I suppose it's saying people need to face consequences for their actions, you know? And that needs to happen, and there needs to be justice and all of these things. But I suppose sometimes it's trying to hold, I keep coming back to cognitive dissonance, I suppose, also being able to hold space for the idea that this person is someone's child, or this person, you know, like, you know, and I think it's just trying to, you know, as I said, be like, no, this bad behaviour needs to be, you know, but like that also that people are human.
I think about that all the time now, though. Since I have my son, I often look at people and I'm like, you are to somebody else what he is to me, and that, like, and it's just made me even just look at my own mother and, you know, forgive her for so much. I was like, you know, you were so young dealing with all that you were dealing with and stuff like that. And with my book, right, I did not want to explore any motherhood themes in this, because my first book, If Only, was about a woman who, you know, she had PCOS. She didn't know if she could have children or not, and she was leaving she was calling off her wedding, and she was about 30. So she was like, I'm probably possibly saying goodbye to a chance to have children, and that's where she was at kind of mentally. So a lot of that kind of book was her like grappling with like, what will my life look like without children, and kind of looking at, so it explores like parallel lives and like, you know, should I have done this and what if I'd done this and that kind of thing. But that was a big theme, like that kind of yearning for having children and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to go into it. So I'm writing about two women, and they're not mothers, and they're, you know, and it's still massively wheedled its way in, just into like,
I was going to say obviously the relationship with their own mother.
Yeah,
it's such a central kind of theme of it, really.
Yes.
You know,
and even just like one of them kind of coming to terms with like she doesn't want children, and for one of the other characters, it just becoming so important, or her realizing that that's something that she thinks, look, or maybe that is something that I do want to live for, actually, because she starts out the book in a very dark headspace, and I know, I just want to hug her so bad. And she, but yeah, and then I have a pregnant character, and there's like a whole storyline with her, and it's like, it just came into it in so many different ways.
That was a really good twist, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I won't say, no spoilers there now, but there's a twist that I was not expecting that.
I wasn't, when I was writing that, I was like, oh God, no. And I think those are the moments when you're writing that are really exciting, though.
Yes.
You know when you're writing something, you're like, oh, if I was reading this, or if I was watching a movie with this, I would love this.
Yeah,
that's a nice feeling.
And sometimes that only comes, I'm not sure if you feel like this, but like sometimes that only comes with like the second or the third draft, you know, when you're rewriting it, you're like, oh, maybe I'll make this character do this, and it's like just takes like a little twist.
Yeah. There was a couple of questions that you sent on Instagram when I said that Louise was going to be here. So someone said, how long does it take you to write a book?
Okay, so the first draft will normally take about 5 to 6 months, and that's, but like when I talk about a first draft, like they're so messy.
Yeah.
And
are you good at not editing as you go?
Oh, I can't. Like if I started editing, like if I started rereading my work as I went along, I don't think I'd finish. I'd be like, this is a pile of shite. I just have to keep writing and go, it's brilliant. And then I go back and I'm like, oh no.
See, that's my biggest problem. Like I do, and I never get a first draft done that quickly because of that. Like I tend to like, it's like as if I'm trying to send in a third draft, and my editor's just like, just go bleh, and send it to me. And I'm like, but I'm so embarrassed by that. How do you get over that? Like,
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you ever get over it. Like every time I send one, I'm convinced. I'm like, well, they're going to want to cancel the contract. Is that to be done? Yeah, they're going to come back and say, oh, it was just really nice working with you, but this is too terrible for
no.
But I actually think with editors, I think they've seen kind of everything, and I suppose they're trained to sort of look at for the diamonds in the rough. Like they're like such a cliche, but that's just they're trained to look for the potential. So, and that's their job. So I'm sort of, I think,
I'm so jealous that you're at that point, like 5 or 6. It just I don't know. It just means you can get through more. You can write more often. You know, more prolific.
But I suppose, like, you know, you have a child, and you also have like this. I mean, this is such a demanding job as well. You know.
But if I wasn't reading back over my shit, I would do it quicker.
Yeah,
because I do. I change. And do you know what the stupidest thing about that is? Is like the sentence structure. Even from like my 4th, 5th draft is different now in this, and it's like, what is the point of editing a paragraph over and over again that's going to be possibly cut or completely changed anyway? So it's a bad habit.
It's best to just get it down on the page, and then you go back and because then you can look at the book as a whole and be like, okay, now I'm going to start editing it, and now I need to like I could actually cut the first 20,000 or whatever. But I think that like if you're well, for me anyway, I think that if I was doing it as I went along, I just feel like I would get very despondent. So I think it's just trying to keep that like energy up, and also you can't edit a blank page. So like if you have the book finished, you can go back and you can rework things. And a friend of mine who's Sarah Moore Fitzgerald, who is a children's author and also is a creative writing professor, says she gives herself 3 drafts in the beginning. So the first draft is to get it down, the second draft is to get it right, and the third draft is to make it good. So she doesn't even think about quality, she doesn't think about whether it's good or not until the third draft. And I think there's huge freedom in that, because with that first draft you want to kind of approach it like, I'm trying things out, I'm just trying this out, and like just to take all of the pressure off and keep the stakes very low.
So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna like cut out that clip of you saying that, and next time I'm starting one, I'm just gonna like play that on repeat, because
oh my god, that's not creepy at all. My voice like on a loop while she's working. I'm like, just listen to me, Melanie. Melanie, you're doing great. Okay, wait, this is for you now. Melanie, you're doing great. You're a brilliant writer. Keep going. I believe in you. There you go. Now you can cut that out, and you can like.
It's like my labour. I was listening to like mantras, and she had that soft spoken voice, and she was like, my baby is going to come at the right time. I was like literally listening to it like, what is your work schedule like while you're writing and your process? So like, what does it look like? What does a day of writing look like for you?
Okay, I mean, I think every writer has like such a different process, and like I think that most people, I think the most important piece of advice that I could give any writer is figure out what works for you. So like figure out what time of the day you're the most creative. Figure out
morning.
Same here. I have a friend though who writes until like 5 a.m.
Oh god.
And I just can't imagine that.
I'm so tired at like,
yes.
Even when you got here I was like, I need a nap.
Yeah. Oh my god, I felt the same, and I didn't say it to you. We were obviously both trying to be really polite to the other person, going, oh my god, I'm so tired.
I was like pouring the kettle, I was like, fuck me, how am I going to do this? I need a bit of caffeine, like but yeah, the morning, like when I wake up, I just feel like because I wake up very early, but like between that and like noon is like my peak.
Yes,
hours.
I'm the same. I'm the exact same. So it would kind of be from like 7 or 8 a.m. until lunchtime, and then my brain is dead, and it's very hard after that. You know,
I had to, with this, I remember I had to do some of it at night, because when my baby was like really difficult, I had to do it when he was asleep, and I remember I was literally going cross-eyed. I was like, this is going to be a pile of fucking shit,
and it isn't. It's really excellent. So
I think maybe I fixed it a lot in the mornings. Maybe that's what happened. I think it was the first draft was like there was some gobbledygook in it, because I was spelling, you know, the name Tig.
Oh yeah,
completely spelled wrong. In fairness,
Tig is a funny one. Like just, I mean, it's a lovely name.
I was,
but you know, when you look at it, you're like, those letters don't make sense.
No, I know. You know. I spelled it wrong. I had like, there was so many things that I know it was my baby brain. Like, and I was calling someone Emma at one point, and she was Rachel here, and she was this and that. My editor was just like, what's this girl's name? And it was a shit show.
You poor thing. But they're used to that. And actually, it's one of what I often do with the characters at the beginning of a book is I'll do like a little questionnaire on each of them, so to try and get to know them, but also it acts as a really handy Bible. So when you go back, you're like, okay, her name is Rachel, and like she has green eyes, or you know, whatever, because often those things get lost as you go on. And you're like, what?
Yeah, don't characters sometimes change even how they look? Yeah. Like they blend. They it's like an amalgamation of loads of different memories and things, and I have to read. I have to go back in my own writing sometimes to remember, like, what someone looked like, or what kind of clothes they wear, or what kind of music they were listening to, or whatever. But yeah, do you write like at a desk or on the couch?
Yes, no, God, no. I have I have my own writing room, and which is like such a luxury. But like
I love that. No, I'm in the process of creating one. I've never had anything.
Amazing.
I've never had a work.
It'll be such a nice space, like just for you, and just like. And you can put all your books in there.
Do you ever look at all of your books in a pile and go, oh my God?
Not really. Like my parents have sort of like all the books in their house, and like all the kind of foreign editions and things like that. Whereas I don't really. Maybe I should.
You should.
Yeah.
Especially because you're so good at, every time you tackle a new genre, like you nail it. I don't know how you do that, because you know, like some people do get pigeonholed, and they're like, this is the type of book I write. But I feel like every time you go into a new, it's so unreal. Like,
I think I'm just someone, I get bored very easily, and I sort of feel like I'm always trying to push myself, and I'm always trying to improve, and you know, which I think every writer.
You still have a thing though. I think even though you do different genres, there's still a. I'd say other people who read your books are probably like, it still felt like a Louise O'Neill book, because you always tackle like really like serious and difficult issues. And I think like your feminism and all that kind of stuff does always come through, and like, you know,
can't help it.
So,
It's just like, it's like, hey, and I go, there's feminism again popping out.
But yeah, so you've a writing room, and do you like try and go for a certain word count, or do you know any
yeah, I know I do try and like the work, and see, I think that's probably a good tip as well, is that often before you start writing you have this sort of sense of, oh, it's like the muse will come and it'll be, you know, it's like, no, you're like, no, it's
discipline.
Yeah, and you also have to go, okay, if I want this book to be, I don't know, 80,000 words, and I have this is my deadline, well then how many words a week do I need to write? And then you kind of have to, you know, you kind of have to stick to that, unless you want to be stuck with like, oh shit, I have to write a book in 2 weeks, and no one wants to do that.
Some people that like seem to think that means it's going to be shite, like, you know, just because you're forcing yourself to do it, but it's not like, it's you and I think as well, when you're doing a first draft, if you spent 10 years on the one book, you're not in it then. You kind of have to just fuck yourself into it, and then it comes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do that as well. So I kind of always, but I really struggle to do more than like 500 to like 1,500 words in a day. Like that's like, and it doesn't sound like very much, but it really, at the time, it's very, sometimes they come really easily, and other days you're just like, okay, I have one paragraph and I'm done.
I know. The days where they come really easily, you're like, oh, I wish every day.
I know. If it's dialogue, it's so much easier for me.
Yeah,
it's like, you know, but the descriptive stuff, I'm always like, oh, it needs to be new, or it needs to be like, I'm always trying to think of like ways I described things before in like, say, my previous book, and I don't want it to, you know what I mean? I don't want to reuse certain words too much.
I've written 6, and at this point I'm like, I've run out of words. I've run out of descriptions. I've run out of words. So you'll find that now with the next book, you'll just be like,
oh shit.
Yeah, like you're like, you will. And I suppose all writers have ticks.
Go to things,
you know, or they have like little we all have them, where you're like, oh, I use this phrase a lot, and then you have to like, like word search, you know, like in your document, I'm allowing myself 2 of these. I had a lot of like people raising eyebrows and things, and then you have to go back and go, okay, I only get 2 of those. I'm
2 and done. The last one we'll do is, what do you think makes a good story?
Oh my god, that is such a good question.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know what's funny is that someone, this is kind of related, like, if for me, I think what makes a good book anyway is like, first, that it's really well written, second, that there's like, I suppose, a really strong hook, you know, that I'm like, oh, that's a really clever idea, and then third, that I feel like the author has something to say, and you know, I think for me, I think that's what kind of makes a good story. Like that's to me, if I was like, if a book has all of those 3 things, and the one I'm thinking off the top of my head is, I'm not sure if you've read it, it's called The Vanishing Half.
It's always like, oh, that's on my to be read pile, but it's still not
the to be read pile.
Not been read.
The to be read pile is just
it's constantly building,
isn't it? And every time I look at it, I cannot explain. I have this sensation of like a real heaviness on my chest, and I just feel so bad about myself.
Because some of them I'm like one I put off for years, and it was The Night Circus, and I fucking loved
that
it.
book.
I loved it, and I don't know. I was like, why was I not? Why I was always like, no, it's not the right time. It's just not. It's not the right day. All conditions the stars need to align. And it was so, I read it in like on a couple of flights or something like that. I loved it.
Yeah. Like, sometimes I think you have to even give yourself the first chapter, and then kind of see how you're getting on. Because I see that's what happened with yours. I read the first chapter and I was like, oh my god, she's a great writer. Okay, I can continue.
Oh, that's so nice.
No, it's
true. The way you get worried about the first chapter, like they always say, you have to, like with the first chapter, like really.
I know you want to kind of grab. You have to kind of sort of grab the reader.
And I was debating including a prologue, but then it kind of, as I wrote the book, I was like, oh, I need to give a little bit of kind of context. Yeah, as I wrote it, then I was like, I kind of think a bit of a prologue is necessary. I ended up being like, should I add more points of view in the book and stuff like that, but then I was like, no, I really want it to be about just these 2 people. Like I don't want to throw in other points of view, but a book just kind of like becomes its own thing a lot of the time. It's just like, it's so strange, and I've such a respect for authors. Like anytime I'm reading anything, like my writer brain is always like trying to pick apart how they did it, and I just it's so
that's when you know you're a writer. It's when you can't enjoy a book anymore.
Yeah, you're reading it, like, how did they do this?
Yeah, you're kind of looking like for the joins and the you're like, how is this working?
I know, and it has ruined it a little bit for me. And I suppose even like with even when I started doing YouTube, and like I've kind of dabbled, like I made a short film before about abortion, like it was like a family drama, and it was the girl's getting an abortion and her father's very pro-life and her sister's very pro-choice, and it's all this, there are the conversations in and around that, and at the end it's, she has to go over to England to get the abortion. I can't watch movies now without constantly thinking about, the reality was they were just sitting around a lot, and they had to film this so many times, and I can notice inconsistencies, like when the hair is like this and then the hair is like this.
Oh yes, the continuity error.
So it's ruined it. So it's kind of like that. Right, since I started writing fiction, it's changed. But that's why I love this so much, because I was too distracted to do that, and I was
that's a compliment.
Oh my god, like I don't read books very fast anymore, especially not physical ones.
I can imagine.
I mostly listen to Audible.
Yeah. Audible
is my savior since I have my son, but like he was playing on the stairs, and I was like, I usually wouldn't read while I'm minding him because I want to be really, really present for him, but I was like finishing it, and I was like, yeah, oh very good, and I was like literally, I think I text you asking you about the ending, and my god,
the ending
so
is
good.
Explosive, I think.
It's so good. But you finish it and you're like, so you need to go and read this book.
As we said, so you need to read this book first. And then when you're feeling a bit shook, you need to go read this book in order to calm down. Calm the nervous system.
We've got lots of stuff about nature and reconnection with family. Thank her very much for coming on my channel.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was lovely to have you here.
Very exciting.
And I love doing collabs because it used to be such a pre-pandemic thing here around these parts, and we don't do these much except with my sister. So, I'm
her new sister.
Will we do a little goodbye?
Okay.
Goodbye.
How do we do a goodbye?
We do this. Every day is different. I don't have an outro.
I'm like, I don't know what's happening. Is this normal on YouTube?
Goodbye, goodbye, good friends, goodbye. 'Cause now